Welcome to the Diane McClay Show, empowering life through choice. Get ready to discover new perspectives, motivation, and balance through Diane's compassionate storytelling and insightful discussions. Whether you're feeling stuck and discouraged or curious and looking for more possibilities, Diane has your back, and she's ready to take you on a journey of self-discovery and expansion. Choice is powerful, and so are you. The Diane McClay Show starts now.
Welcome in, everybody, to another show of the Diane McClay Show, where we're here to help you empower your life through choice. As anybody who's watching the show right now may notice that the background has changed. We're going to freshen things up in 2022. We are now shifting the show from a 30-minute conversation to a 1-hour conversation so we can get you in-depth strategies, tips, and helps to empower your life. We're going to feature our new sponsor of the Diane McClay Show, Cindy Lynn. We're going to get to her in a minute. But first, I want to welcome in Cornelia Stephanie, who is a gifted intuitive, energy guide, and a visionary for the pioneer and a pioneer for the new earth. She's an anchor host on the Transformation Talk Radio, a spiritual teacher, my mentor, speaker, author, and a new earth ambassador. And she's the founder of the Cornelia Stephanie Media Group app. And she believes that knowing the self is the highest level of knowledge. Cornelia, as always, I love having you on the show. Thank you for showing up.
It's so fun to be with you. Thank you.
I know. And
Yeah.
I'm super excited because your guest that you had on your show, Dr. Janika Benoit, just teed up our conversation about choice and health and empowering ourselves just perfectly without even planning it. Dr. L. Carol Scott had some great conversations about the inner child and changing how we trust ourselves and changing that language. And I can't wait. Cindy Lynn is going to bring us all sorts of good stuff about changing our identity when we have a diagnosis or something that really shakes our world medically. Cindy Lynn Lamoriciola, did I say that right?
Lamoriciola, yes.
Lamoriciola, she goes by Cindy Lynn, as an integrative life coach and founder of the Heal Your Life community. She is compassionate and dedicated to empowering women as they actively manage their diagnoses and their lives. As a cardiology nurse, mother, daughter, and patient herself, Cindy Lynn has navigated the question of what now, and is passionate about helping others create optimal health through informed consent, decision-making, and intentional action. Cindy Lynn, welcome to the inaugural show of you being our featured sponsor. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Diane. It's really exciting. I'm excited to be your first. And I'm super excited because you and I have had so many good conversations that it's really going to be fun to be able to share some of that with your listeners.
Right. Well, let's tee up the conversation today. We're talking about empowering your life through choice. And the reason why I have these two amazing women on the show is they come at holistic living from two different perspectives. Cornelia coming from the energetic, high vibrancy space, how we lift ourselves up vibrationally and how we use our own emotions to control our own health. And Cindy Lynn coming from the medical background and now focused on really helping women be informed about when something gets told to them. And Dr. Janika Benoit, who's just on the Cornelia Stephanie show, had a beautiful story where she was saying she overheard a doctor in her working group talk about that he wished his life went back to the way it was before he was a doctor. And then she talked about looking in the mirror and how she encourages her patients to be healthier. And then she realized there were things about her life she wasn't doing herself. And what I love is Cornelia used the phrase, when I was waking up. Cornelia's had a story where she stepped out of corporation, and she's also made a choice in her life to make sure she could live the healthiest. And that's the tee up. That's the conversation we're going to have in the next 45 or 50 minutes. Who wants to start? Who wants to jump in? Cornelia, you want to talk a little bit about how you got here and why the new earth is so important to you and sort of what's on your heart today?
Well, I'm just, I'm so blown away by just, being here and also the conversations that we just had. And I really, truly believe that we are living longer and that we are not our trauma from our past. We are not our stories from our past. We are not our upbringing, and we are not our disease. And I know that Cindy, you can relate to that. One of the things that I was saying to Dr. J just now is that when I was waking up to the fact that everyone on my father's side was dying of heart disease, all the all the uncles. So there were like 7 uncles, and they all died of heart disease. That is when I made the decision that I will not follow in that footstep, that I will not die of heart disease just because it happened. It's in the DNA of my family lineage, and that's not what I want to do. I instead then overrode that and said, I'm going to do everything I can to open my heart, heal my heart, and take care of myself. And that really was the beginning, and also part of why I left the corporate world, because I felt like a slave. I heard the soul say to me, the voice one day asked me, do you want to live like this for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
And I said, no, I don't, because I was working, 6, 7 days a week, 80 hours a week. I was in a very high functioning job, managing large groups of people, and was up for a promotion, and just, chasing the hamster in the hamster wheel. I was in that wheel, but I didn't have any passion. I didn't look at the trees. I didn't look at the seasons. Time was just coming and going. And so when the soul said, do you want to live like this for the rest of your life? That's when I said, no, I don't, because I felt like a slave. And then I started looking at, well, what is it that you do want? And so then you're going to love this, Cindy Lynn. I went on Amazon. It was during the holiday season, 2007. And I went on Amazon, and I was getting ready to buy some Christmas presents. So I was buying books, and I saw the book from Louise Hay that said, You Can Heal Your Life. And I said, oh, good. I can heal my life. I'm going to buy into that. I'm going to order that book. I'm buying into that belief. I'm going to order that. And then what is the other thing I'm going to do? I don't have any passion. I don't even know what passion is. I am a slave. I feel like a slave. I'm a robot. So what's the opposite of that? And so then I purchased another book called The Passion Test. And really, truly, those 2 books, The Passion Test and You Can Heal Your Life, passion, and the belief that I can heal my life. And that's what I've done. And so now, at the age of almost going on 60, which, by the way, 60 is the new 40. Make no mistake. So that's what it's all about. Is, back in the day, we used to live into our hundreds. And my belief is that we can do that today. And that's, I'm going to live into my hundreds, and I'm choosing that now. So that's what we're talking about.
I love that. I just want to recap 3 things that I just heard, because we're on the Diane McClay show. We're all about making sure that we put real strategy in people's hands. And one, I heard you say, that's not going to be my story. Then I heard you say, what's the opposite of that? And then I heard you say, do you want to live like this for the rest of your life? I think those are 3 really powerful questions. What's the opposite of the way I'm living right now? Do I want this to be my story? And if I don't, what's within my control to shift out of that? And with that, I believe that when you hear that, when you feel that soul, when you hear that voice, that muse, it might whisper to you, but you may not know where you're going when you opt for change. But I absolutely believe that when you feel that you cannot stay where you are, that's where awareness comes in, and that's where your power starts. Cindy Lynn, you want to jump in on that one?
Absolutely. On that last note, what I talk to patients about, what I talk to clients about, what I talk to family members about, is that change is difficult and it's uncomfortable. But we have to become more uncomfortable where we are to be comfortable with making a change. And I know both of you who work with clients see that probably every day. You can help someone. They aren't quite ready. They aren't quite uncomfortable enough with where they are to try something new. Your story, Cornelia, resonates with me so much because I literally made myself sick working. And the same type of story, more and more. And I'll take care of myself when, I'll start exercising when, I'll start eating better when, but right now I just have to get through this. Well, this lasted for years. And the habits, the taking care of myself, none of this, I didn't get around to it until my body forced it, until it was so painful and uncomfortable to be where I was that I was willing to make a really big change. And even when I did that, I had stories about that. I had stories about women who couldn't hack the corporate life. I had stories about women who couldn't keep up or couldn't balance it or couldn't do it all or couldn't have the family and the career. And those stories stuck around. It took me as much time to heal those stories as it did to heal my body. And as I noticed that was going on, those experiences, and that was something else that, that we've talked about a lot in the past, is these experiences happen to us. And so we don't forget about them. We don't bury them. We don't get over it. But my job is to help people integrate those experiences into their lives. Because as we all know, those experiences are integrated into our cells. We carry those experiences with us physically. So we need to integrate them into our life, into our identity. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure, Cornelia, you felt the same way. You left that corporate business. You knew exactly who you were, what you could do. And when you made that move, it probably took you some time to figure out, okay, now who am I? And the same thing happens when we make huge changes due to diagnosis, illnesses, and we have to be careful not to become that illness, in the same way that it's all too easy for those of us who've been in the other world to become that director or that manager or that person with that role. And it's so much of who we are, we don't know who we are without that.
I want to chime in here because I love how you just talked about incorporating the experience into the identity. And real quickly, I was a park ranger for 23 years. It was my dream job. And there were some things that happened along the way that pushed me to a place where I had to make the decision to leave. And it was painful. And there was shame associated with it. Maybe I didn't do the right thing, and there was guilt, like maybe I didn't meet the expectations of my parents, or I didn't retire in this job after 35 years. And I remember writing my journal one day, I'm becoming who I am because I forgot who I was. And that's actually on my wall now, because I feel like every day that I have an experience, I'm doing the work. It's why I have coaches like Cornelia. It's why I have a community like the Cornelia Stephanie Media Group app, where there's healers in it like you, Cindy Lynn, that I'm doing the work. But that doesn't mean that experience doesn't go away. And I remember the way I told my story a year after leaving my job is significantly different than how I'm telling the story today. Because what was happening is I got trapped in the loss of my identity. I got trapped in, I'm not a park ranger anymore. I'm not a steward of the land anymore. I'm not in government service anymore. And what I realized is the title is gone, the badge is gone, the authority with the shirt is gone, but I still remain. And quite honestly, I think I'm a better steward of the land today and a better communicator of the messages of the earth today, because I'm actually not confined to the corporate box. I'm not working within the framework that someone else has set for me. But your point about integrating that experience, I think, is really, really critical, because how do we do that? A lot of times our society says you have to have this and then get rid of that and then start something new. And I think I really want to dive in here and talk about, what does integration look like, and how do we do it, and what are the steps, and how do we take some of the old and blend it with some of the new and still be authentic and true to ourselves?
That's really the key. You summed it up there. And I like the way you say that you tell your story differently now than you did then. And it was the same way with me leaving the corporate position. It's the same way with the diagnosis, with illness. And part of the goal of that integration is that when you rewrite that story, and I'll clarify that because that sometimes sounds a little bit insincere or disingenuous to people, but when you rewrite that story, when you be able to tell it differently, you have to have made that experience part of your history, but not who you are. It's what you've done. It's the doing versus the being that we talk, and Cornelia, you talk so much about that as well. It's something I did. I did treatments. I did this diagnosis. And by the way, I can help you do it better. But it's what I did. It's not who I am. It's not the being. And so people who no longer want to be heart patients, they don't want to be diabetics. And that's that tag and that language we use is very powerful. And so that's a common usage, not one that I prefer, but I think it's one that people recognize. And when you take that shame away, because like you said, there's shame in that. And it was that way for me too. There was shame with leaving the corporate world. And I guess she was one of those women who just couldn't figure it all out. There was shame when I started having health issues. What did I do wrong? Am I being punished? All of these kinds of things that we pick up all along through life. The stories from relatives, the stories from friends, the stories just, that are in our environment. And so to integrate what has occurred, what is happening to you, but keeping it separate from who you are, is not denying. It's not lying to yourself. You aren't misdirecting yourself. You're simply saying, okay, this is an experience I had. Maybe it was a very unpleasant one, but it was an experience I had. I learned from it. I changed from it. How do I change my story now? And with that comes a tremendous amount of grace. And sometimes you learn to give yourself grace, and sometimes someone sets that example for you. And I have seen that so much in the app, in the media group, and in everyone who Cornelia has brought together. Just that grace to say, oh, have you, well, what about this? Or I'll help you with this, or here's an idea for this. And there isn't a lot of that always in corporate environments, and there's not a lot of that in healthcare environments. So that's a real big piece of finding that grace, finding the doing rather than the being of your experience, and then creating a new story around it. And grace may look like simply acknowledging, I know I've learned so much now. Then I did the best I could with what I had. And you know what? I did a pretty good job considering. And now I'm here. Would I do it differently? Maybe. But that's what I did then. And it's brought me to this point. And then we continue. So our story about our life, a story about our corporate world, our story about our illness is constantly evolving. Genuinely, sincerely, but it evolves because we change perspective with every passing hour and day.
And
Absolutely.
I'd like to add to saying, when we then integrate and we move to the place that you're speaking from right now, Cindy, we create from that place. That's the place where it is possible to live life without disease, to renew, because the physical body has the ability to renew and rejuvenate itself as long as it is given the right environment. And the right environment, of course, is going to start with how the environment that we set up. Do we set up the environment with toxic thinking and emotional abuse, or how is the environment set up? Do you feel peaceful in your environment? Is that the new environment? And so this is all part of that integration that you're talking about, the change, that we make when we let go of those destructive habits that we used to do, including when I said that I'm not going to be dying of heart disease like everyone else did on my father's side of the family. When I made that decision, then what else is part of that decision back then is to quit smoking, right? Okay, well, I liked to smoke. I didn't want to quit, but because I valued that my heart, I want life, I want to change my life. I want to change that story. So it was all part of that, then making better habits and making better choices of creating an environment that's going to be set up that's more in alignment with where I want to go. And at the same time, when we're doing the healing work, integrating our shadow is also the shadow parts. We all have the shadow, the shame and the abandonment and the not good enoughs that we've all felt. It's all part of that integration and integrating the shadow, not discriminating against the shadow, not shooting on the shadow and making it wrong or bad, but actually welcoming in, walking intimately with the shadow. Because from that shadow place, that's where you're going to rise above it and integrate the shadow into your being and tell the new story from a healed and whole place. And that is a process. It's not overnight, right? It takes time.
It isn't. And you talk about that shadow side, and that's where one of those vicious cycles where we can become ashamed of being ashamed. And then we beat ourselves up about that. And it can be never ending. And yet from the shadow experiences have come some of the biggest learnings. And
I'm going to interrupt you real quick.
Yes.
We can't see in the dark unless we put light into the shadows.
Absolutely.
We just can't, right? So having the courage and using the power of choice to actually be willing to say what's in the corner, what's in the dark. Oh, that looks like that's me. Let me turn the light on. I believe we don't ever have to get rid of our shadow. And in fact, I think it could be detrimental that we try to get rid of all of those old pieces. But if we can learn to walk into the cave and we can turn a light on somewhere in the corner where it's not completely dark, but it's not completely lit, and we can start to make friends with our shadow and we can say, hello, I see you. What do you have for me today? What am I supposed to learn from you today? I think that's a piece of that. My word for the year is apply. And I just gave myself chills thinking about that. Apply, the root word means to essentially to bind together, to braid, to twist. So if we can bind together what we find and discover about ourselves in the shadow with what we vibrationally put out into the world at our highest expression of ourselves, I think that's the true essence of integration. And I interrupted you, Cindy, so I want to go back to you, but I just wanted to call that out, that I think it's important to be friends with the dark.
It absolutely is. And I love the analogy. I love the story around that. And I like stories a lot because that's how our mind organizes things, is to put it in a story form. And I see that light, to continue your analogy, is when we accept and learn from a shadow space, the light is then there. It no longer is necessarily a shadow. It's no longer, once we've, his joke, well, apparently I didn't learn that lesson well enough because the universe has provided it again. and you might as well say that with a light heart, because once you recognize that's what's happening, then that's what you do. But I see very much as once you've integrated and learned that piece, then that's the light moving out into the cave.
And I want to flip that real quick. Words are really, really important to me. And I appreciate the lighthearted approach of, oh, hey, there's that lesson again. Maybe I didn't learn it the first time, right? But even in that, what if we shifted the words about that story? What if it wasn't, I didn't learn it well enough the first time, which implies we failed or we didn't succeed or we're not good enough? What if we just said, wow, this lesson is so important, I'm getting it again?
That's very good.
Right?
Very
what
good.
if it's just, this is showing up again because it's so critical for me to hear it?
Well,
right?
a lot of
Just
times,
think about how that feels when we change the language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a lot of times, we're walking the spiral. the spiral of evolution. We're walking around in that circle, just walking around and being presented with these opportunities to rise higher, to rise higher. And then we come, it's like peeling the onion, the layers, peeling the layers and looking at what's there. And sometimes those roots are so deep that it might take a couple of walk arounds. It might take a few onions of peeling. When is this going to end? I thought I was done with that. That's there again. Oh my gosh. So, but the whole point is being able to look at, we talked about the corporate piece. And I really feel like a lot of us that were in the corporate world, that were workaholics, working, doing, being disconnected from nature, being disconnected from our true nature. That was a big shadow to observe and see and recognize. And I think that's also where some of the illness starts, from that place, is that disconnect from our true nature, from nature, because nature heals, because we are that force of nature. But we have to, again, provide the environment for the physical body to have that meeting.
Absolutely. Well said. And, this is a fantastic conversation, and I'm so glad that we've expanded the Diane McClay show so that we can actually get into the details of this a little bit more. We're going to need to take a break here in just a little bit, but when we come back, we're talking about integration. I'm going to give you the definition of integration, and then we're going to get into some tips and some strategies from Cornelia and from Cindy Lynn about how we can literally start changing our story, how we can change and empower ourselves and living beyond. I'm Diane McClay with Diane McClay Show on Transformation Talk Radio. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Hey everyone, come check out this new app I'm featured in. You're going to look for KS Media Group app in the App Store. Download it, launch and create your free account, get the free ebook. You're going to find me under directories. Click on resources of the world's best influencers. Find me at the top of the list and take advantage of evolving your daily practice, cultivating deep inner peace, growing in love with my YouTube channel, and all the ways that you can connect with me now on social media and other ways as well. There's also a long list of live podcasts there that are listed under the directories to help you to live your best life now. Go and hurry, get the KS Media app, go to the App Store and download it now.
Welcome back to the Diane McClay Show, where we're here to empower your life through choice. And with my guests, Cornelia Stephanie and Cindy Lynn, and we are having a really amazing, in-depth and dynamic conversation about leading a holistic and healthy life through choice, and with the courage to change the words of your story. Before the break, we were talking about integration, and I'm a self-declared word nerd. Words are important to me as a writer, as a podcaster, as a speaker. It's really important that when we're trying to deliver our message, we actually pick the words that have meaning. And in the English language, the Western world, we tend to get a little bit lazy about the words we use. We use the same words. If we're mad, it's different than if we're angry. It's different if we're upset. It's different if we're disappointed, but we tend to say, I'm mad, because it's easy. Well, in order for us to be heard, in order for our messages to get delivered, in order for transformation to happen, we have to be deliberate and intentional about the words we use. Let's go to integration. During the break, I looked up the etymology is about bugs. The etymology of a word is basically the origin, where it came from. Integration essentially means the act of bringing together from the whole. But in its nominative form, it actually means renewal, restoration, to make whole, and to begin again. And I think when we have an understanding of the origin of a word, that starts to put us on the pathway to shifting the words we use in our stories. Cindy Lynn, do you want to jump in on that? Cornelia, what do you think about that?
I absolutely love that, to begin again, because that's a big part of the work I do, and the meaning and that the work brings to people in their lives. And way back in the beginning of the show, which I apologize, I don't remember who said it, but somebody had talked very much about wanting life to go back the old way. And one of the things that I've learned through experience and working with all of my clients is that after a diagnosis, after an illness, after a major life change, even if it's a career change, we may feel that pull, that need to go back to what's comfortable, but we've changed. So there is no back. We're a different person that we can no longer plug into that old situation. And that creates problems in and of itself. So once people realize that they get to begin again, they release some of the struggle to put that new square peg back in the round hole, because it just isn't going to fit. And it allows them to think about moving forward. And that's in and of itself is a tremendous shift of mindset.
It feels so easy when you say that. You know, it feels so at ease when you say that. It's such a nice beginning. It's so welcoming. It's so honoring. It's so beautiful in the environment. Everything.
It's graceful.
It's I mean, that's where I want to live. Thank you. You know, that is where I want to live, in that. And so for me, everything that you said about the word integration, the way that I have worked with words and meanings, like what does certain things mean to me? What do words mean to me? In order to become my own authority, and, you know, what does something mean to me? How do I define it? What's the meaning of home? What's the meaning of being sovereign? What's the meaning of integration? So before I would go look up a word, I would sit with myself and ask myself, define integration. And so because I'm curious to look first within myself to see, what does it mean to be integrated? What does integration mean to me? Define that. And then I would journal that. And then I would look it up and say, oh, look at that perspective. Because really what it comes down to is, whenever we look it up, somebody came up with some different definition and wrote it up there. And then I would be looking at it and go, this is what it means. Well, I always like to bring myself into the equation first, because that never used to be the story, right? Yeah. Because before, always looking outside of myself to find out what something means, asking someone else instead of asking myself. So now I would look at the word integration, and while we were on break, I was journaling without actually journaling, and but basically what the journal was, and I know you two are both journalers too, so we're journalers. We love journaling, right? And what integration to me means is becoming one with, becoming one. And so isn't that a beautiful way of defining integration, becoming one with it, being at one with it?
When you said that, there was literally a softness and an opening in my chest. As you said, becoming one with, there was permission, there was grace, there was approval, there was love, there was acceptance, there was value, there was respect, all these things that are important to me. As soon as you said becoming one with, I literally felt like I took a breath in with those words, and I literally integrated them into the cells of my body. And I want to just say thank you for setting that tone, because just like with diagnoses, we get given a title of something that someone else has described, heart disease.
Yeah.
You're going to have heart disease. It's in your DNA.
Yeah.
With your concept of coming into yourself first, that's really where the place of empowerment really starts. What do you want? Do you want this to be your story? And if you don't want it to be your story, what are you going to do about it? So I love, 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 and I feel like I'm going to incorporate this. I love the concept of before I look up someone else's definition, I'm going to sit with it and see what it means for me. And then apply and incorporate kind of the logistical language that other people set context for. But I think that tees up Cindy Lynn's topic about having informed consent and understanding that you can change the identity of the diagnosis, right, Cindy? You're nodding your head, you're smiling. I think
yeah,
Jonesing to jump in here.
Absolutely, I am just on a number of levels. You know, when you talk about the new beginning, and I reflect on what Cornelia said in her journey, that, okay, she decided she didn't want something. And if you get to start over, if you get a new beginning, then you have to, it prompts you to say, okay, what do I want to choose? What choice do I want to make? And then that prompts you to look out to the future or out for other options, as opposed to just wanting to go back to how things were. Well, then once you make the choice, once you have that courage to make the choice, then that drives behaviors. So for you, it wasn't someone from the outside saying, well, you really should stop smoking because people in your family died. You decided that you didn't want to follow that path. Okay, what does that mean? Probably smoking would keep me on that path or headed in that direction. So we're going to take that component out of it. All right, what else is in my environment? What can I do? And that's that natural flow. So letting people know they have a choice because they're moving forward, not going backward, opens up a whole world. Now, when we hear a diagnosis, you know, and ironically, a diagnosis is very often just another name for the symptoms we're experiencing. Or sometimes it's a big scary word like cancer. You know, people hear that word and really lose their ability to reason sometimes for a while. If you're sitting in a doctor's office and you hear those words very often, you can no longer absorb information after that for a period of time. And yet, I think if people knew, for example, that we all have cancer cells floating around in our body all the time. These are just cells that have gotten kind of confused. They're our cells. They're our own. They aren't enemy invaders. They're not, you know, from outer space. They're not mysterious things. They're our cells who've gotten a bit confused. And our environment of our body is not in a strong enough position to kind of realign them and say, hey, shape up or ship out. Okay. That might be a bit simplistic from a medical perspective, but essentially that's what goes on. And so when I talk to clients and I say, all right, this is what's going on in your body, you have options. You can decide if your story is that I am a victim of this alien invader, and I shouldn't make light of the subject, but sometimes it helps for people to really kind of sort that out. And I tend to use humor. If you aren't, if it's your body and your body's behavior, then hey, you may be able to influence that. How do we go about doing that? I'd be happy to help you, happy to direct you to others who can help you do that. Does that mean we don't proceed with other procedures, other investigation? No, but it gives some of the power back and it gives some of the ownership back. And even going back to our conversation about shame earlier, it's a very, you know, and the language perspective is that when we are willing to take responsibility for everything that happens to us, you know, yes, I had a role in this, then we also get to take ownership over how it's going to play out. If we have nothing to do with, if we are a complete victim of circumstances, then we have no power to actively do anything about it. We can just kind of hope for the best. And so juxtaposing that language of those two things and those two sensations, the idea of regaining your power is very often a comfortable enough approach so that people begin to take ownership of everything that's happened to them, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's one of the areas where language is really important to me.
It's so true. It's so true what you're saying, and taking ownership and really looking at it and saying, yeah, yep, this is what I used to do. This is how it is. Where do I want to go? I love how you talked about the cancer cells. Back in 2011, I had two big, huge ovarian cysts, and they were the size of, I bet many people can relate. They were the size of, oranges, and it was really painful. So when I went in to go get the ultrasound, they were like, oh my God, you have to have a hysterectomy. We need to do biopsy for endometrial cancer and this and that and this and that, right? And so I'm just like, wow. And so then when I came home, I called my girlfriend and I told her what happened at the doctor's office today. And then she goes, well, now, Cornelia, I guess it's really time for you to walk your talk and practice what you're preaching and practice what you're teaching. So this is what she told me, right? And she goes, you're helping people change their beliefs. You're doing this work. You're doing the emotional core work. She said, heal it. Go heal it. So this is what she was basically looking at me going, okay, go take care of it. And I was like a little taken back, but I thought, So I got on the phone and I called the appointment, the doctor, and I said, I want to cancel my future appointment. And so basically in my mind, I'm canceling my appointment with cancer. Mm-hmm. I'm canceling this, and now I'm going to heal these cysts. I'm not going to have a hysterectomy. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go in and look at the emotional suppression behind these cysts first. And then I'm going to find some healers and helpers and do some different things like that to really change my diet. I did all of those things and I never had anything else. And that was in 2011. So
you are teeing up perspective perfectly. So what I heard in that is you got something from a professional, somebody who knows more than you do. And typically, and we're going to get into this in Cindy's shows in the next 3 or 4 segments, we're really going to dive into how we can challenge the system, the professionals, the people who know more than we do. We've got some stories that'll help people step into that sense of personal empowerment. But what I heard you say is, I'm going to go call someone else, right? So you didn't just absorb the information and integrate it blindly. You said, okay, now I've got to call somebody that I trust and respect, and I'm at least going to get their opinion, or they're going to help balance me out with this overwhelming news. So 1, you got a different perspective. 2, you started creating options. Now in the Choice and Courage Company and with Diane McClay Coaching, we believe that as soon as you have awareness, your power goes up. As soon as you start creating options from the awareness you generated, your power goes up even more. And when you make a choice from the options you created, you're pretty much unstoppable. Being able to say, I looked at the emotional healing and I looked at the root cause of the problem, and I was able to take care of something without invasive, long-lasting medical treatment because someone told me I should. It's freaking amazing. Like, who does not want that kind of power in their life? Like, if you don't want that kind of power, then, jump to another podcast. But if you want that power, this is where you get it. It's Transformation Talk Radio. It's the Cornelia Stephanie Media Group. It's Reframe Fridays on the Diane McClay Show. It is here that you get a different perspective. Change your words, change your stories, change your power. And I believe that as soon as you have awareness about one thing, you actually cannot go back to that place of lack of awareness. You might forget about it. You might choose not to engage it, but that's going to be there in your subconscious, your unconscious mind, your conscious mind. It's like seeing the red car. If you're on a vacation with your family and you play the red car game, you don't see a red car until someone says, hey, let's play the red car game. And then you see them all over the place. True. This is where you get it, people. This is Transformation Talk Radio. Cindy Lynn, Cornelia Stephanie, Dr. Pat. This is where you get it. So is this the story you want in your life? And if it isn't, what are you going to do to change? Cindy, you're nodding your head. Jump in here.
I'm just nodding my head. There is one message that I take to pretty much all of the new clients that come to me say, oh my gosh, I was just diagnosed with, or I have this, or is, and this comes from working in medicine as a nurse for many years. There are very few emergencies. Okay. And that's not to discount your experience and say that it's not important or devastating or extremely upsetting to you. But when you talk about an emergency from a medical situation, like I'm in a car accident and there is a bone poking out of my leg, we have a fabulous system for that. Unless that's happening, unless you're having a stroke, unless you're in the midst of that heart attack, there are very few emergencies. And so what does that mean? You have time to ask questions. You have time to call a friend. You have time to get those perspectives, and you have time to make new choices based on those perspectives and the knowledge that you can gather. And so having someone or some group in your life who reinforces, if they know nothing about medicine, they know nothing about ovarian cysts, they know nothing. If you have that person in your life who says, oh, what are the options for that? You are already light years ahead, because you pause and you say, oh, no, the bone isn't poking out of my leg or blood squirting out here. So I have options. Let's go figure out what they are. And that makes all the difference in the world for people's story moving forward.
I believe in generating solutions more than I believe in sorry, let me say this again. I believe in generating solutions more than I believe in solving problems. And the brain, Dr. L. Carol Scott was talking earlier on Cornelia's show about how the brain holds on to things, especially when we're children. And she was giving the example that when kids run, when they're learning to walk and they fall, we never say, oh, they don't know how to walk. We always say they're learning. And she challenged the listeners to kind of go back to that childlike state of trust. And so I just lost my thought. Sorry. It's kind of like, if we can just shift the perspective, as soon as a friend says, I don't know anything about this, what are the options? The brain now wants to generate solutions. I don't know what the options are. The brain doesn't know the difference. Cornelia, jump in here.
Well, and I remember it now, because you said earlier that you're going to call somebody. And so when I remembered, one of my things was really clear at that time in my life, still is today: who to call. That's important, because I didn't call my mom, because my mom and I are going to go into fear together, right? I didn't call my mom, we're going to go into fear. Or I didn't call, another person, where I was very particular in who I called, because I don't want a victim story. I don't. So it was that clear, being that clear with who you're calling, who's on your team of people when life happens, when things happen, who you're going to call. The people that are going to hold you high, that are going to call you to the highest, and that are going to support you, that are going to help you succeed. I'm not here to go, woe is me. That's not what I want to do. So this is part of my strategy also, and it was even since then. And I don't even know if I ever even told my mom this story. It's like was very particular who I tell, what I tell, when I say something. So it's important for the listeners to know, if they're finding themselves in a situation, get your team together, get your people together, right, Cindy?
Absolutely. And I think on the next show, we're going to talk about an entire communication guide that I've written that helps you with language. It helps you maintain your privacy while still sharing your message. It prompts the questions of exactly what you just said. Perhaps this person loves me very much, but they're not in a solution mindset. They will experience fear for me, and that's not the energy I need. And so that I'm very excited to share in that particular section, because it's been a guide that's been really helpful for folks.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad you brought that up, to be able to tease out our next show and really make sure that we can give people solid tools. My brain works in metaphors. And I think, as we get older, we have directives, we have medical directives, we have the thing on the fridge that says, if, my neighbors know who to call if something happens to me, right? We have these, we plan for the worst case scenario, and then we hope that it's not going to happen. But we don't really plan in a forward thinking kind of way. What if, my two questions, what if and why not? What if we said, man, I know shit's going to happen sometime in my life. It just is. Change happens whether we seek it out or that lands on us without our consent, like a job change, like getting pink slipped, like getting a diagnosis. So when things are normal and calm and we feel empowered and strong, what if we created that list of who to call?
Yeah.
We do it when we're going to die. Why wouldn't we do it while we're living?
So,
If I go to a foreign country when I travel, I have a phone tree. I'm going to call one person, they're going to call a person, they're going to call a person, stuff like dogs, finances, bills, house stuff. It's all going to get taken care of because I have a plan. Cindy Lynn, what you're talking about is we're going to be giving people concrete ways to empower their life today, not wait for the diagnosis to show up, but plan in case it does. And then let's identify them. Cornelia, you talked about journaling. Who are my supporters? Who are my optimists? Who are my generous people that I can call? Who are the people that like the drama, right? Let them be the ones who call everybody else, right? Let them function in their specialty. But put the aces in their places. Who is on your team to move you forward? Because if it's not your story and you want it to change, you have to have the characters and the actors. Just like this radio show here. We've got Jacob in the background. We have Olivia. We have Kim Hunt. We have Ashley, who does a lot of my promotion. We have Trish Campbell, who did this beautiful banner. I would not be successful if I didn't have a team of people around me. And the question is, who's going to help me move forward the way I want? Right?
And knowing how to use each of those people.
Right.
Because
it's brilliant, Cornelia.
You have to know how to use each of those people and use them for their gifts. I found so many times people genuinely want to help, often don't know what to do. And in the process, there's misunderstandings, miscommunications, sometimes hard feelings, and all of that. So part of that is also, how do you ask for help to get it?
And we're going to get into that in another show.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
we got
I can hardly wait.
left.
Yes.
This conversation was so amazing and so in depth. Cornelia and Cindy Lynn, quickly tell people how they can find you and how they can connect with you if they want to seek the help that they need to empower their life through choice. Cornelia?
go to the KS Media app. Go to the KS Media app. You can get it at the App Store or at the Play Store. Download it, create your free account, and come join us there. Always on Transformation Talk Radios on Friday. Cindy?
I am at Cindy Lynn on the KS Media Group app, and you can find me and my program and a link to the guide if you want to get a sneak peek there.
Right. And I know you have a free giveaway. If people go to your website at cindylynn.com, they can actually enter their email and they can get 5 steps to living past their diagnosis. Once again, ladies, this has been powerful and amazing and transformative. Thank you for being here. Cornelia, you're going to come back again. Yes.
Yes.
All right. And Cindy Lynn, for everybody else, Cindy Lynn is going to start her series with me as the featured sponsor on the Diane McClay Show. And she comes up on the 2nd and 4th Friday between 1 and 2 Pacific time. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Remember, you can empower your life through choice.
Thank you for listening to the Diane McClay Show, where you are empowered to enact change in your life through choice. You know that little voice in your head that's been telling you to pursue that passion project? Or maybe it's been screaming for you to go outside and explore the great outdoors. That voice is you, and you deserve to be heard. Listen, make a choice, make a change, and watch yourself grow. For more information about Diane or to work with her personally, visit dianemcclay.com.